The scandal of new homes sold on leases with ground rents that escalated, making them impossible to sell on, will be investigated by the regulator, the Competition and Markets Authority. The CMA will also look into whether the contracts were fair and whether the fees that are charged when homeowners want to make improvements are fair. An estimated 100,000 homes were sold with what the Housing Secretary has called extortionate leases. In March, a committee of MPs called for the law to be changed to help people stuck in these leasehold homes. Well, Katie Kendrick is one of them. She bought a house in Ellesmere Port in 2014 from the developers Bellway.
I received a letter to say that my freehold had been sold on, and I was not aware of what the implication of that actually was until a neighbour alarmed me to the fact that the permission fees upon the onward sale of the freehold had in fact gone up. Permission to put a small conservatory onto the property went from £300 up to £2,600.
That's Katie Kendrick. So what might the CMA be able to do to help people like her? Well, I spoke to their Senior Director for Consumer Enforcement this morning. He's George Lusty. And I started by asking, what took them so long?
After the House of Commons Committee issued its report, it was absolutely clear to us that there were some very serious issues that we needed to look into. And that's why we've launched our investigation.
Because the Housing Secretary, James Brokenshire, had asked you to look into it back in November. And at that time, it was reported that you had refused.
At that point, we didn't have the report that the committee had prepared, which has shone a much greater light on some of the problems that have been faced by leaseholders, and we were concerned about what we might be able to deliver. We've looked at the issue afresh, and we are satisfied that we can make a difference through this piece of work that we're taking on, and we're really happy to be looking at it because we think we're looking at some serious concerns that consumers face.
Now, if you do decide that the house builders have used unfair terms in their contracts, or that they have been mis-selling these leasehold homes in the sense that the people who bought them did not understand what they were getting themselves into, what will happen then?
Well, ultimately, if we find that companies we think have broken the law, we would take them to court. It's possible if they agreed to address our concerns, they wouldn't need to go to court and we could solve it through a settled outcome. But this is the start of the investigation. We want to gather in information. We're using our formal powers to seek information from developers, from lenders and from the freeholders to make sure we can get a handle on the extent of the problem and what the most problematic clauses look like.
The MPs were worried about the people who are stuck with these houses. If you decide that there has been wrongdoing, what difference will this inquiry make to them?
Well, we are going to look back at the situation of those people who find themselves trapped right now, potentially with properties that can't be sold or where they can't get a mortgage. Looking to the future, that's a matter for government to decide whether it wants to change the law to prohibit these types of clauses and fees from being included. Ultimately, if we decide to take a court case and the court agrees with us that these terms are unfair, we think that would help the situation of people who find themselves in these problematic leasehold arrangements and in challenging fees that the court has found to be unfair.
Can I ask you about the solicitors involved in these transactions? Because the people who bought these homes, many of them say that they used solicitors who were recommended to them by the house builders and that their solicitors never pointed out to them the dangers of these escalating rents and excessive charges for making home improvements. Will you be talking to them?
So ultimately, anyone who is involved in misleading a member of the public to buy a particular product or service could be breaking consumer law. But there are also regulatory issues, of course, which the Solicitors Regulation Authority, which looks at the conduct of solicitors, is already examining, we understand. But we'll be principally looking at whether or not these terms are fair and also whether the mis-selling of leasehold properties could itself break consumer law.
That's George Lusty from the CMA.